Our next storyteller is Abang Kervin. Kervin was born and raised in Cameroon, an educator and school administrator. He has served as counterpart to Peace Corps volunteers since 2018, developing a passion for community action, volunteerism, and youth empowerment along the way. Please welcome Kervin to the stage to tell his story, The Path of Transformation.
In a small village in the eastern part of Cameroon arrived a Peace Corps volunteer called Kervin. We were all so excited because it was our first volunteer to receive in our community. But we were wondering if Kervin would be able to cope with the scorching sun that hits you directly on the face like a hand and the heavy rains that would thunder like a concert of drums. Every day, if we're not in school, then we should be visiting one home in the community. Because to us, complete communal integration is that a stranger should share a meal with at least half of the population. Sharing to us is a craft. Before we could realize, Kervin became part of us. Kervin 1, myself, and Kervin 2. One day, as I was carrying out my daily routine as the school discipline master, I realized one female student dragging herself to school. I looked at the time, she was 1 hour late. I became very furious and charged towards her, calling out in a loud, authoritative, and intimidating tone, typical to discipline in our community context. The young lady folded herself and started crying. Later that day, we were seated at our usual spot with Kervin beside a river that flows through the village and watching the sun as it is casting its light through the fast approaching dark. Kervin broke the silence. Bro, as he used to call me. You know I have so much respect for you. You have taught me to become a great teacher and to successfully integrate into the community. Don't you think that the manner of approach towards that student was not very appropriate? She is always late, and besides, aggressiveness works best for students. Kervin shook his head in disapproval and said, you are mixing up between discipline versus punishment and respect versus fear. Which is more valuable, fear or respect? I did not answer, and Kervin continued. If there is one thing I have learned in this community, it is from the saying, I am you and you are me. We should not always put power at the center of our relationship, but treat each other the way we want to be treated. However, I decided, because of Kervin's advice, which was very laudable intellectually, but I could not reconcile that with our traditional approach in which to educate a child, we must break their physical and psychological courage. I therefore decided at least to observe Kervin's approach, not because I wanted to learn, but because I wanted to prove Kervin wrong. I was like every day, come on, looking for a situation to prove Kervin wrong. But months came, months went, I saw no opportunity. But I was instead surprised to realize that there was one very notorious male student in discipline in Kervin's class whom Kervin transformed positively. I had to bury my pride and go towards Kervin. Kervin told me that if we break a child's psyche and make them to live in fear, they will not be able to explore their inner potentials and can become more indisciplined in future. With all of this, I had no other option than to adopt Kervin's approach. And the first thing I did was to call the female student I shouted at some months ago. Aisatu, I would need to see you, as she was called. When she arrived at my office, I said, in a very polite way, have a seat. But we could see fear all over Aisatu's body. It wasn't also very easy for me to ask for forgiveness, because to us in our community, the elder is always right. But there was a voice telling me, you need to do it, you need to do it. I opened my mouth and the words came out. Aisatu, I know you do not deserve the way I treated you the other day. Can you look for a place in your heart and forgive me? As Aisatu took up her hair, you could see a tiny smile on her face. And she said, Sir, nobody has ever said this to me. I am also very sorry, and I promise to change. I later realized with so much remorse that Aisatu had family challenges. But as from that day onward, she became very active in all school activities until the two of us created a ladies' club in school to help and empower teenage student mothers. The funny thing about my story is that I became an advocate of gentler, disciplined approach. Some of my colleagues were even mocking at me and calling me names. But to me, the results I recorded were far more constructive than the traditional approach. I would therefore say that my relationship with the Peace Corps volunteer, Kervin Strom, was very impactful. Kervin told me that he learned to become a great teacher. Why? I was transformed to adopt gentler, disciplined approach, which has helped me in my career as a discipline master. I would therefore say, like we say in my community, I am you, you are me.